I work for an organization called the Africa Center for Economic Transformation, ACET. And for us, economic transformation means simply this: fast per capita GDP growth in an economy that's diversifying both the production and export base, and at the same time upgrading the technological capabilities embodied in production and exports, and becoming increasingly competitive internationally, and while at the same time creating jobs that leads to shared prosperity. It is more than just growth, and it's certainly more than poverty reduction that the donors, including the World Bank, delight so much in focusing on. We think poverty reduction is important, but I think we need to move beyond that. And so that's what we try to do in ACET through both research and advisory services.
I was asked to speak to a workshop that's discussing debt. And to me, why would a country need to borrow?
What I like to talk about is financing economic transformation, because after all, debt is one of the important ways of financing economic transformation. I'd like to broaden the topic a bit and consider other options and put debt in that context.
I decided to broaden the topic, that financing economic transformation, one could do it in several ways, one of which is external debt. And therefore, I wanted to go through all the menu of things available. But more importantly, I wanted to also point out 2 or 3 important points.
It's become very fashionable, if you look at many economic plans or in many African countries, for policymakers or countries to say, we want to become a middle-income country, we are going to double our per capita income in about 10 years. That's very common. I'm sure many of you have seen that or come across that. What does this mean in terms of resource requirements? Now, doing a very simple back-of-the-envelope calculation, one can link the required investment rate to how fast you want to double this per capita income, to the efficiency of capital use, to the rate of depreciation and the rate of population growth. And if you do that exercise, you quickly find that in order for a country to double per capita income in about 10 years, and if you take depreciation rates to be about 3%, which essentially means that capital lasts at least 30 years, which is a very conservative estimate. And if you also say that population growth is about 2.5% a year, which is, I think, the lower range of the estimate among sub-Saharan African countries, you quickly come out with a figure that in order for you to double per capita income in about 10 years, you need investment to GDP ratios about 43%. Now, this is the type of investments that took place in the East Asian countries over the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And it's the type of investment that has been taking place in China since about the mid-90s. And of course, if you are investing so much, you have to finance a bit of it yourself. And so if you look at their investment, their domestic savings rate, these are over 30%. How does sub-Saharan Africa compare? Right now, we are investing about 23% a year. But our savings rate is about 13%. That's a 10% gap. But that's not it. As I said, if you really want to double your per capita income in 10 years, as we say we want to, or even in 15 years, if it's 10 years, then the gap is 30% of that you have to make up in savings or to get others to come and give to you from the outside. And if it's, you want to do it in 15 years, the gap is about 22%. Where's the money going to come from?
Another point is that rather than the nation trying to get its own resources to build or getting debt to build that you have to repay for, invite other people in, put in their equity, and let them put the capital in there and operate and get their profit, and then in the process we get the investment and we get jobs. And so getting foreign equity participation, either through PPP or public-private partnership, particularly in some of the key infrastructure areas, or getting foreign direct investments in productive investments in factories and stuff, are also important. Even if the government is efficient in seeing to its own resources, ultimately the biggest part of investment is going to come from the private sector, especially domestic private sector. It's important that government does all it can to make sure that whatever investment that the private sector makes is efficient and it goes much further, rather than, you come to a country, even to get the initial approval take you several years. You start a project and it stops in the middle because you can't get a paper. Meanwhile, it just escalates the cost unnecessarily. So, and then you put in a nice factory and tomorrow things are breaking down because the electricity is unreliable. So government having the type of complementary investment that ensures that private sector investment are operating as efficient as possible. And this is particularly in the infrastructure side. And this again harks back to the importance of public sector investment management, because the resources are limited. You need to be able to prioritize and say which type of resources are going to give us the greatest bang for the money. To be a developing country means, you're poor, and if you're poor, you should take a much greater interest in making sure that every penny that you have is used well, even more so than a rich man. A rich man can afford to waste money because a little change here that doesn't make a difference. To us, the million that you throw away is a million that's not available for somebody to be able to get access to a rural clinic, right? Or a school. So African countries or poor countries of all at least afford to misuse their money, which tells me that if I had my way, I would like to see in each one of our countries, in the government, a very professionalized system, whether it's in the Ministry of Finance or it's in the Ministry of Planning or whatever, of top-notch professionals that really are able to subject any government proposals for investment to critical analysis. If you're going to build a $10 million road, or let's say a $10 million hospital, and you spend $5 million to construct half of it, and it's not finished, and then you wait. You spend you wait another 2-3 years and the thing is stalled. It's $5 million that you've sunk into a hole that nobody's benefiting from. You see? That the country is lost for those 3 years that you're waiting. So eventually, even if you finish it and even there are no cost escalation, which invariable they are, you've lost money. The years that you were not, your money is just thrown in there, how many people in the communities that are intended to use the hospital, how many people have died because they didn't have access to that hospital? How many accidents do you have because the road is only half completed and it stands for 5 years while you sank money in it and it's not done? So we need to get to the point where we are very, very conscious about this is where we want to be in 10 years. It means this. These are the investment requirements and these are the timelines that we have to do. And given a small amount of money, we cannot afford to waste. The good news is that as a result of HEPIC and MDRI, many countries now have a headroom. We have public and publicly guaranteed debt to GDP ratios falling from almost 50% to now about around 12%, right? So that's very before, whereas in the mid-1990s and early 2000s, many countries have to make painful choices between having to provide for their people and having to service debt, which was weighing very hard on their economy. And some countries, including this country, was going to have to about a quarter or so of revenue was having to be used to service debt at some point in the 90s. So the HEPIC and the MDRI, the debt forgiveness, has given us a lot of room to breathe. Now the key is to make sure that we don't repeat their own mistakes again. I mean, the monies that we took, if we had used them well, we should have been able to pay back and to be better off. We didn't use them well. So it's very important, given that experience, we should tell ourselves never again. So that you're very, very selective in how you borrow, what you use the borrowing for, and to ensure that that borrowing leaves your economy stronger than you would have been without having borrowed, even after you've paid back. Now, unfortunately, some of these countries now, after they've had this leeway, are running around different ways, contracting debt. But it's important. Just because the thing is there doesn't mean that it's necessarily good for you. Make sure that if you're going Chinese, or even if you're going World Bank, or if you're going India or Brazil or US, make sure that what is being offered is exactly what you want on the terms that you want, and you make sure that it's something that will leave your economy stronger as a result of it, rather than just indebtedness that because you invariably you have to pay. And I don't think there's going to be any debt forgiveness anytime soon. So Africans have been given a second lease of life in terms, African government in terms of the debt. And I would say we should learn from that experience, and you have a much, much more hard-headed, professional approach to going there, rather than rushing in and signing all kinds of things that I've seen some countries doing. This issue of economic transformation, for us in ACET, is a very important central concept. For me personally, it is, but it's not, it requires resources. It's not going to be, it's expensive, but it can be done. And to do it, we have to get serious. Either we are serious about it or we are not. If we are serious about it, we have to start taking the measures that are required in order to start moving us forward.